Mike Van Horn is a father, a husband, a businessman, and now a Republican candidate for Charleston County Treasurer. I talk one-on-one with Mike about the issues for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Mike Van Horn, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I appreciate you greatly. Needless to say, you are a husband, a father, a businessman, particularly a restaurant leader, and now you are a Republican candidate for Charleston County Treasurer. So tell me this, Mike, why Charleston County Treasurer? Why now?
Well, as it is, Quentin, first of all, I've been involved, in the political aspect, just from a bystander for a great number of years and have seen a lot of things happen, and we're at a pinnacle point right now in this country where change has to be made. And that goes from the top all the way down. There's too many singles, individual families, and that are working 2 or 3 jobs a day to sit there and try to get by. Being in the restaurant business, I have employees that are working 2 and 3 jobs, and I see them struggle just to sit there and get by. Whether it be the fact that they're only making $15 to $20 an hour, and when they go out to shop at the grocery store for their groceries, they're getting killed on taxes that way. They're getting killed on taxes and everything else that they pay. And affordable housing also, it's pushing a lot of people out of their houses.
So tell me, when it comes to the treasurer's office, what actually needs to be changed there?
Well, the changes that I would like to see at the treasurer's office specifically is transparency and accountability. At the county website, people can go on there and there's a data dump every single month as far as where the money is going, as far as disbursements. And people have to scroll through every single page in order to find out that information. I would like to institute real live data so that way individuals can go on there at any point in time and see where their money is going, have transparency and accountability. Also, investors can look at that as well to see, how well we're doing physically with our money. There's too many projects, that are going on. And again, at the end of the day, the only thing you see on that website right now is the budget, the data dump that's at the end of the month. And then also as far as the payroll of any individual that's making over $50,000. So again, those are the big ones right there.
So when it comes to the Charleston County Treasurer's Office, what are the current projects?
Well, the current projects right now, Ms. Tinkler, the incumbent right now, she did institute as far as the installment plans.
Right.
So therefore, it's time to upgrade our systems. We have an antiquated system as far as when people try to sit there and find their tax bills. It's still almost impossible for individuals. There's too many constituents that have reached out to me as far as complaining about being able to find their tax bill, also getting duplicate tax bills, people that have already paid their bills and still getting bills, so there's got to be some mechanisms in place to sit there and help alleviate that, tension for the individuals that have to seek that information.
So if you were to upgrade that particular system, what mechanisms would you put in place right now?
Well, I'd like to see, just from the spending aspect of it, just to make sure that the money that as it's being dispersed, that there's mechanisms to put in place to make sure, if a bill's supposed to be $500, that actually $500 is paid out instead of maybe $1,000. And that way, you get a flag system, and that way the individuals from the accounting department all the way through can sit there and look at those and say, yes, this is a viable bill. Let's make sure that it is paid in a timely manner. Just in the business sense, everything in the business world is usually net 30 days. And I don't want to see individuals like at the State House where they're sitting there pointing fingers at each other, we're wondering where $1.8 billion is. So at the county level, it's important that we take care of the people that are in this area that are paying the taxes. And, those are the things that we can do by putting those, installation programs in place for it to be more transparent in that sense.
So how much money is being dispersed within Charleston County and to where?
Well, in Charleston County, again, the budget is this year, I believe it's $849 million. So therefore, the disbursement is to all the different municipalities. Obviously the sheriff's has a big portion of that budget itself. As far as the county projects, again, whether it be infrastructure as well, there's different projects that are taken care of in that sense. And obviously also the payroll for the entire county itself. There's an exuberant amount of money that's being dispersed, across the board. So it's important that we have that transparency and accountability and those mechanisms in place to make sure that we're able to identify where that money is going at any point in time.
Now, when it comes to the Charleston County Treasurer's office, what projects inside the office itself are happening right now?
Well, they have the license where the individuals are able to sit there and get their stickers, so it saves them a trip. Because again, with the 4 locations throughout Charleston County, there's an opportunity for folks to sit there and handle more than one thing than other than especially making a trip to the DMV, which can also be an extensive line for folks as well in that sense. So that's a plus in that regards to help people save time.
Speaking of saving time, as you know, Charleston has been growing since you moved here in 2009. So, what areas right now would need expanded services and locations to help them get services faster and versus going to the DMV?
Well, again, a lot of the things that can be done a lot quicker is easily and more readily available information online, because we live in the technology age as it is, and it's important that we take advantage of that. Just for myself, trying to sit there sometimes looking for my own personal tax bill, unless you have the specific PIN number or, a code number, whatnot, sometimes you get lost as far as, what number you're looking for to put that in on the county website. And then to just get yourself to that specific site as far as where you can pay your bill as well. There should be a direct landing page that says, pay my bill, enter this number specifically, and it could be unique to the individual as far as the number that they create or one that's on their tax bill that they receive. And sometimes people get lost in that and it gets frustrating for them.
And speaking of those tax bills, how many tax bills were sent out last year in 2023 by Charleston County?
The exact number, I don't have that data, on my behalf at this point in time, since I don't have the information as far as what's sent out. I know it's a program that is outsourced from the county itself, so I don't know the exact numbers per se. But obviously, with over 400 some thousand residents, and then you take into account also the tax bill for boats, motors,
Yes.
trailers. It could be an exuberant number in that sense.
When it comes to that, as far as outsourcing that, how much would you bring that back in house, and how much would that save you all in the treasurer's office?
Well, I'd like to bring it back because number one, when you bring it back, you're creating jobs. When you outsource, you're paying another company, no matter where it may be, at that point in time. So, number one, there's always the savings opportunity. And I'm a firm believer that when you keep more things in house, you're able to sit there and manage it in that sense, and also oversight aspect of it as well. You won't have a situation where individuals are receiving duplicate bills, because maybe there's a computer error and we don't have an opportunity to sit there and correct that until after the fact that it's made known in that sense. Instead of sitting there reaching out, keep everything local, shop local, live local, local everything.
And when it comes to that oversight, what else would you be looking at in that particular regard?
Well, again, at the end of the day, if there's a situation that arises, let's make sure that we identify what the problem is. And then if it's, whether it be directly reaching out to the county council, to make recommendations to them, and find the solution. Because at the end of the day, the taxpayers are the ones that are suffering. Because if the bill is not paid on time, what happens? There's an automatic, mechanism that triggers a penalty for them. And why should we penalize individuals? Because it could be something that's on our end. And then you have to do double work and sit there and correct the mistake and try to remove those penalties as well. So you're duplicating your work, and it's going to save time and money just by keeping everything local.
What recommendations would you give the Charleston County Council now in regard to the Charleston County Treasurer's office?
Well, one, I would sit there and like to see them, expand as far as the locations, because again, 4 locations, out of 419 square miles, that's still not a lot of, locations for folks to get to. Again, updating the website, it's all too important that we update the website to get more information that is real-time data for folks, and a lot easier to sit there and navigate through instead of, having a landing page that you almost get lost in.
Yes, sir. Well, let me ask you this then. What else would you add to that website?
Well, I think it was, just the landing page itself. If you could sit there and just have, a treasurer's office or, the solicitor's office. And then when you go to that, click on that button specifically, then it goes to that treasurer's page, and then sit there and say, okay, here's my tax bill information, and then go from there. Or if you want to look at the financials, you can look at the financials in that sense. So again, just making it a little bit more streamlined in that sense, instead of it just being jumbled all over and there's a bunch of hyperlinks. And again, you can get lost in all those hyperlinks on a daily basis looking for stuff.
And I'm probably being redundant, Mike, but what
Yeah.
else would you obviously, streamline when it comes to the Charleston County Treasurer's office?
Well, again, making sure that I think as far as streamlining is making sure that we educate the individuals, the workers themselves, because if you go on to Google and sit there and check out the reviews, there's too many times where I see that where people were rude to individuals. So that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we address is that at the end of the day, we're in the people business. We're taking care of people, so we need to make sure we address those and make sure that people are treated with respect. It's a very frustrating thing for people when they sit there. Sometimes people fall on hard times where they can't make their bills. So let's treat them with respect and at the end of the day, help them, educate the consumer because at the end of the day, they're the ones that pay our bills and they're the ones that pay my check at that point.
And speaking of bills and whatnot, how many special taxing districts came online in Charleston County in 2023?
That information I don't have readily available, so I can't give that data to you.
Let me ask you this: how much disbursement of funds did the Charleston County School District actually receive last year?
Well, the budget itself, I'd have to dig more into the numbers themselves. I mean, I know the teachers just recently got a raise, of $35,000. So that's a huge plus in that sense because again, we're behind the times in that sense. Another thing I'd like to see is obviously also the first responders, fire, and police department for them to get raises as well because again, those are the folks that are fighting for our lives on a daily basis, educating our children. There's opportunities to sit there and save money and still reward those individuals in that sense. And that's legislation that has to come from other individuals, not the county treasurer's office itself.
Now, how much money would that be saved if you were to do that?
I'm sorry, to save and do what?
Yes, sir. As you just mentioned, obviously save money and be able to pay these people. How much would that help as far as saving?
Well, again, you have to look at the budget and go, line by line as
Sure.
far as, what areas of opportunity to sit there and save money. Where, just as an example, the sheriff's office right now, they have like approximately 49 or 50 deputies that they're short,
Right.
so again, those individuals are working overtime. Some of them like to work overtime, but again, a lot of them are working overtime being stretched all across the county because again, there's not enough people to do that. So if we bring in more people, you create a better quality of life. I like to look at things like Chick-fil-A as an example. They have the perfect business model. They reward their people. They're always happy. They're enjoying themselves. So again, if you can sit there and extrapolate that down to a microcosmic aspect for the county level, again, when you have more folks that are helping, doing, I'm a firm believer that if you surround yourself with positive people, positive things happen. And that's why, I want to do this for the county itself.
Yes, sir. And I want to get back to that in just a second, but I know the treasurer's office also maintains records of revenues collected by these districts and invests any funds not immediately needed for this disbursement, obviously. So, how much of those funds were actually not immediately needed for disbursement in 2023?
The part as far as immediately dispersed, I don't have that raw data because again, that's not something that's put on the website. So again, that's an in-house aspect.
Okay.
So again, it's something that's not real numbers that somebody can pull up. But again, if we were to sit there and put real data on, that's something that can be shown as far as on a P&L aspect, as far as the amount of money that is invested currently. These are the disbursements currently, and forthcoming charges that we may have.
Now, I know the treasurer, obviously, as you know, is elected official, serves as the holding agent for funds for many of these county departments, as you just mentioned, Charleston County Sheriff's Office and whatnot. So, what was the county's collection rate last year?
Collection rate as far as the amount that it was collected, or
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
uh, that part. Again, I'd have to pull up the budget itself specifically. I could tell you this much since
Yes, sir.
2017, 2018, the population has grown by 5.5%. And with that growth, we've had disbursements of about 4.1% more than we have in the previous years as well. The budget this year just went up, I believe it's 4.1% is what the budget just went up this year. So the county continues to grow. So, it's important that we maintain the growth that we have, maintain the infrastructure that we need, and also making sure that we're accountable with all that money.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, Mike. How does the Charleston County Treasurer's Office actually grow with smart growth?
Well, when you grow with smart growth, it's one of those things. Again, you're going to have more entities that are paying taxes, so therefore making sure that those entities are logged properly. Again, I don't know the exact processes that are in place until I'm in place, But again, it's making sure that, that the proper tax bills are going out. There's no situation where somebody's getting lost in a loophole somewhere, and at the end of the day, people aren't getting penalized because of the fact that they're not paying on time because the wrong tax bills went to the wrong locations.
Now, obviously, these departments deposit deposit, I should say, their funds such as grants, the plat sales, fines, and copy fees with the treasurer who invests these monies along with tax collections to generate additional revenues for the county in form of interest earnings. What were the interest earnings on those additional revenues last year?
Again, that part I don't have the specifics as far as the numbers because again, that's not something that's shown on the websites. As far as the data. So again, unless you're physically in the office itself, those numbers are kept in house in that sense. It's not shared with the public.
How much properties in Charleston County are finally falling onto these tax rolls?
I'm sorry, say that again, please.
Yeah, yeah. How much properties in Charleston County are actually finally falling onto the tax rolls?
Well, again, you have, the number of households. I don't have the specific number of households, but I can tell you, obviously we have in 2025, there's going to be a reassessment of everyone's properties, and that's an automatic 15% increase plus with the millage and stuff taken into account. So, there's a lot of tax dollars coming into the county in that sense. So, and, it's important that we keep track of all that money.
Now, obviously, you mentioned this too, but I know the prices of cars have also been a slight benefit to most municipalities that is here in Charleston County. So, when you look around Charleston, what municipality has been seen the slightest benefit from these
As far as the tax
cars?
itself, the
Yes, sir.
cars.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, you have pockets of whether it be like Johns Island, also when you go out to the outskirts of like the Ondal area, even also Hollywood and Edisto area as well, the outlying areas, because again, when they're out in those areas, it's more of the rural areas that seem to be the ones that suffer the most because again, there's not the population or the density of individuals that are living in those areas to sit there and generate the tax revenue that maybe benefit them more so.
And of course, as you know, Charleston is booming with a lot of construction. So, how's that construction boom actually impacting the area's tax roll?
Well, again, with the construction, obviously there's individuals that, have to pay more or less all right, I forgot the word right now, impact, aspect as far as an
Oh,
impact fee.
right.
So, when those individuals pay that impact fee, that's additional revenue for the county itself in that regards, whether it be home developers or whatever the case may be. And obviously that money is passed back on to the consumer end of it. So, if you're one of those individuals that's buying a house, that impact fee is obviously into the price of the house as well. So there's nobody that's going to, a developer's not going to sit there and say, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to pay that money for you in that sense. So,
And I know a lot of new buildings here in Charleston are actually paying for the growth and allowing municipalities not to raise taxes. What municipalities around here have not had to raise taxes as a result of that?
not having a true scope of all the demographics of everything in that sense as far as the true raw data in that sense, obviously that comes from in-house, but I would say more so when you have a truly developed area as far as like downtown Charleston, North Charleston in some areas as well, Mount Pleasant as an example. We've limited the amount of growth in Mount Pleasant specifically, especially with the impact fees that were put in place years ago. So those areas that are fully developed, they're the ones that don't necessarily have to worry about that. Whereas you have some areas that are starting to grow even more so, and therefore that's going to generate, more individuals to sit there and pay taxes even more so.
What are those areas right now, Mike?
Well, throughout Charleston County, the areas that I see, obviously, when you're going out to Johns Island, James Island, those areas are starting to get saturated itself. There's over 30 people moving to Charleston County on a daily basis. And with that, growth comes additional tax revenue and also, puts pressure on infrastructure and everything else. And therefore, it also drives up cost of everything. I mean, you look at the home prices, how they've increased over the last few years alone, specifically.
And speaking of which, as you just mentioned, everything's going value. Everyone's value is going up. So how would that actually change the assessment base in the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, the again in 2025, the assessments are going up, and generally, it's historically it's a 15% increase during that assessment period. And the home value, as an example, I'll just use a $400,000 home as an average. So that individual, they're going to sit there and get that 15% increase, and it's going to continue to sit there and go up. And what the problem is we have so many folks that are, 65 years of age or older, live on limited incomes, or their set retirement accounts that they have. And a lot of them are getting priced out of their homes because they can't afford the taxes. As I mentioned earlier, everybody falls on hard times, and it's important that we take care of these individuals because at the end of the day, if somebody doesn't pay their taxes on time, they end up getting penalties as far as a 3% penalty, then a 7% penalty, and then a 5% penalty before it goes into the delinquent tax collection aspect. It's important that we help individuals because I don't want to see anybody in Charleston County, let alone the entire United States, displaced out of their home because, they fell on hard times.
Where do you see? I hate to ask this question, Mike, but where do you see most of those people, retirees and people on fixed income, being priced out?
Well, again, it's just like I said, the home prices have got skyrocketed specifically. I mean, I bought one of my houses that I have, I bought it in 2013 and we paid 305 for it at that time. And it's now valued at 750 some thousand dollars. So again, if it was to sit there instead of, the increase little by little, if it was on the real value of the home as far as taxes at that point in time, it would really cripple individuals, especially when you have such a boom. There's more people wanting homes than there is the homes themselves. So the supply and demand aspect is what's driving those prices up.
Oh. Where else do you see prices going up in Charleston County?
Well, again, anytime you go in the grocery store, I mean, you go in the grocery store, we're paying an exuberant amount, for stuff there. You go into any of your retail stores, you're paying an exuberant cost there. And a lot of it has to do with the economics that we're dealing with on the national level, and it's trickled down to the grassroots. I mean, look how many businesses have had to close over the years because, again, they can't sit there and afford whether it be the insurance that they have to pay, for their businesses. Also, the wages are being driven up, which, we need to sit there and raise wages. I don't believe anybody should ever make minimum wage. I personally, in the restaurant that I work, all my staff makes anywhere up to $20 to $22 an hour. So I want to make sure, they have a livable wage in that sense. We can't continue to struggle at the way we're going because we're just going to end up crippling ourselves by, outpricing ourselves in that sense.
And with that growth, Mike, what will be the appropriate tax rate needed to actually meet the annual budget requirements for Charleston County?
Well, again, not knowing exactly what the state contributes in that sense, as far as any aid or assistance in that regards, I know there's individuals that I've campaigned with that they would like to remove the personal tax exemption itself, so that'll help individuals there. On the county level, I mean, right now we're at that 9%, depending on what happens with the November 5th, the referendum that's going to be on there, whether the not additional, but to continue the half-cent sales tax, continues on. So, ideally, I mean, we should be able to sit there and govern ourselves and get that back down to, 6, 7%, something that's a little bit more reasonable in that sense. And, who's to say we can't be like some of these other states where, they eliminate a lot of these taxes.
And so when you eliminated most of those taxes, how much would that actually save the average consumer in Charleston County?
Well, just this year alone, I mean, I can tell you just from the grocery side of it, I've spent on average, an additional $800 to $1,200 a month on groceries just because of the price increase. So, extrapolate that into an individual. I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can save money for folks. There's folks that are sitting there paying, 4% tax rate. There's some folks that are at 6% tax rate. There's disparity. If you happen to have a home that has 5.25 acres and my home is at 5 acres, you have to pay 6%, but I have to pay 4%. So let's look at the things the way that we can save individuals instead of penalizing folks. Same with as I mentioned earlier, there's folks that have, the boat taxes and trailer tax and motor tax. I mean, let's why have all those additional taxes? Let's make smart business choices and sit there and limit those taxes.
Well, I'm running out of time, unfortunately, but it was so good talking to you here on Quintin's Close-Ups, Mike. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
I appreciate it. Have a great day. And I hope everybody makes that choice. If you have any further questions you'd like to ask me personally, you can reach out on my cell phone number, which is 843-870-8697. I'm available to anybody 24 hours a day.
Thank you.